We're going to talk a little bit about expecting Christ to return. I thought that would be a good place to land. Acts 1:11 says, "Men of Galilee," these are the angels speaking, "why do you stand there looking into the sky? This same Jesus, who has been taken from you into heaven, will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." So maybe you have a similar experience or a similar story as me. So when you were young Christian or young person, someone said to you, or we heard, that Jesus could return any second. We were told that as children, probably. You heard that? Yes? Jesus could return at any moment. In fact, who actually agrees with that statement? So if you actually believe Jesus could return at any second, show me by a show of hands. Jesus could return at any second. Okay, so a lot of people. Oak Ridge Boys band, Texas. You guys, yes? Okay. So they had a song that says, "Jesus is coming soon, morning, night, or noon. Many will meet their doom, trumpets will sound, all the dead will rise, righteous meet in the skies, going where no one dies, heavenward bound." Scripture for some of you, Oak Ridge Boys. I always like the bumper sticker that says, "Jesus is coming back, look busy." Right? Because that seems to be the understanding. We don't know when, but it could be any minute now. So here's another question, and you can think about this question just a little bit more. Do you want Jesus to return at any moment? In other words, really think about that. How many of you would be fine if Jesus came just as soon as I was done talking? How many of you want Jesus to come before I finish talking? It's never as many hands. We believe Jesus is coming soon, but we don't really want him to. And if we ask, well, why don't you? You'd have your excuses. Some would be personal excuses. You know, there's stuff I want to do first. There's stuff I want to see first. But there's also spiritual reasons. You know, there's friends I want to talk to. There's family I want to share the gospel with. So, you know, maybe I understand you want to see Paris before Jesus comes back, or you want to try skydiving. But maybe if you try skydiving, you don't have to wait for Jesus to come back. If there are people you need to talk to, though, if there's conversations you need to have, and you believe Jesus is coming back any minute, then I guess the next question would be, what are you waiting for? If you honestly believe Jesus could return at any minute, do you love those people enough to share the gospel with them? Some of you know that I do magic for a hobby, and so Penn Jillette, he is half of Penn and Teller, who are famous magicians out in Vegas. Penn Jillette is a very outspoken atheist. He had this to say about sharing the gospel. He said, "I've always said that I don't respect people who don't proselytize, don't share the gospel. I don't respect that at all. If you believe that there's a heaven and hell, and people could be going to hell or not getting eternal life, and you think that, it's not really worth telling them this because it would make it socially awkward. And atheists who think people should proselytize and who say, just leave me alone and keep your religion to yourself, how much do you have to hate somebody to not proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe everlasting life is possible and then not tell them that?" And I love how he ends it. "I mean, if I believed beyond the shadow of a doubt that a truck was coming at you, and you didn't believe that truck was bearing down at you, there's a certain point where I tackle you. And this is more important than that." That coming from an atheist, from someone who doesn't believe. Or maybe perhaps the real reason that we're not hurrying and scurrying is because we really don't believe it. We really don't believe Jesus could return at any moment. Something in the back of our minds is telling us Jesus could return in our lifetime, but he probably won't. There probably is some kind of prophecy. There's probably some unfinished heavenly work that I'm not aware of, and I'll probably live to a ripe old age, unless I go skydiving first. I joke, skydiving is perfectly safe, okay? In 2013, there was 3.2 million jumps, and only 24 people were killed. So that means that's really good statistics. That's only 8 deaths per million jumps. So skydiving is actually one of the safest sports in the world. And I know what you're thinking, well, what about baseball? Nobody dies in baseball, and that's not true. People in the stands die of boredom. Continuing on. Jesus is coming soon, and we should be looking forward to it. Jesus says in John 3, the one who has the bride is the bridegroom. The voice of the bridegroom, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. So the image of waiting for the bridegroom to come is supposed to be me in anticipation, excited, right? On my toes, looking forward, waiting for my master to return. My groom is going to come and take me. I can't wait. I have built up all this anticipation. It could be any minute now. I'm so excited. Hey, have I told you about Jesus? Have I told you about my master? He's coming soon. He's coming to get me. I can't wait. It's going to be so great. Isn't that how it should be for us? Waiting and dancing and just excited? Shouldn't you wake up every single morning? This could be the greatest day of my life. This is the day Jesus comes to take me home. Instead of, man, I really hope Jesus doesn't come today because I got stuff to do. This is how Jesus describes it. Jesus says, stay dressed for action, keep your lamps burning, be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at table, and he will come and serve them. If he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Jesus says, stay dressed for action. And that's a really important image because being dressed, that's a symbol that you are ready. Nobody knows this more than people who live with other people. Your kids are not ready if their socks and shoes are not on, right? Is your husband ready if he is walking around without pants? No. Is your wife ready if she has a confused look on her face and she's staring at the mirror? No. Dressed for action is a posture. You are telling the world, I am ready. If you show up at a house fire and you have no jacket, no boots, and no helmet, you are not ready for service. If you show up at a marathon with your bathrobe and slippers, you are not dressed for action. Jesus says, get dressed, your ride is coming. Now, in Jesus' day, the men of his time, they wore, we'll call them dresses. I feel like Mr. Rogers right now. It's a beautiful day. So we'll say they're robes, okay? So they were wearing robes. I don't want to get tangled. Huh? Okay. This is not my robe. So they wore a dress, they wore a robe, they wore a house coat, okay? And so this, even though it's comfortable, right, this is not really ready to go. I can walk around and have casual conversation with people and be just fine, and I can sit. But if I'm going to actually hustle, if I'm going to work out in the field, or if I'm going to run, this is not a good idea. So if I were going to run, then what a Jewish man would have to do is he would have to take all this bottom part, and it was heavier fabric than this. He'd have to scoop it all up and tie it off in his belt. And he'd have to tie it up here so that his legs were free so that he could run. That would mean you were ready. Like if you were going to work in the field, you'd have to get all of this dress part up so that you could, and then you'd take your belt and you'd tie it off. That meant you were ready. This is just, I'm just walking around and in my bathrobe, just relaxing, you know. So they would understand, I don't know if I should preach like this. I'll take this back off. It'd be funny. So when Jesus says that you're dressed for action, they understand that. He says, keep your lamps burning. What does Tom Bodette of Motel 6 say? We'll keep the light on for you, right? Because what does that convey? It means we're expecting you. If the light's on, then your visitors know I'm expected. They're still up. They're waiting for me. If you don't want the kids to trick or treat at your door, what do? You turn the patio light off. Turn the sprinklers on. Just hope you have really quiet sprinklers. A dark house says, we've gone to bed. We're not expecting visitors. But if you are expecting guests, then the lamps are burning, the house is clean, and the Bible says, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. It's the opposite image of the doorbell rings, and you walk to the door in your bathrobe, and you say, oh, wow, you're here. Okay. When did you guys get in? I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. Would you feel welcomed if that's how they treated you when you came to the door? Would you feel respected, like they honored your time? Watching and ready means respect. It means we are ready for you. Then Jesus says, truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at table, and he will come and serve them. That sounds different. That if guests came over, wouldn't you think that you would serve them? They're guests in your house, so you serve them. But that's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, the servants are ready for their master, and when the master arrives, he's so glad, and he tells them, you sit down, and I'll serve you. When Jesus returns, he serves us. Just imagine that for a moment. Can you picture Jesus, your Lord and Savior, washing your feet? Can you picture Jesus serving you, waiting on you, filling your water glass? Because I can't. I don't understand those feelings. How would I feel to see Jesus serving me? Jesus finds you ready, and he says, I want you to put your feet up. I want you to relax, and I'm going to serve you. That should give you chills. It's an amazing thought. And the next part of that passage says, if he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. So the second watchman comes maybe at, I don't know, what do you think, 1 o'clock in the morning? Just a little bit past midnight? Third watchman comes on maybe at 4 a.m., and it's getting later and later, so you'd think less and less people are ready at this point. Less and less people are awake. Is that the case? Yes, Jesus could return at any minute, but so far, he hasn't really shown up yet, so I guess I'm going to take my shoes off, and I'm going to put my feet up, just maybe catch up on some Netflix, have a power nap. You wake me if you see Jesus. Is that what's happening? Because the longer Jesus waits to return, the more people fall asleep. And Jesus says, but know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Well, that analogy changed. I mean, first it's a welcome guest. First it's a bridegroom who's returning. It's your master. Now it's a thief. Now a thief is breaking into your house. You ever ready for your house to be broken into? If you knew the time and hour, that your house was going to be robbed, would you be asleep? Or would you be ready? Would you be in your bathrobe? Or would you be dressed for action? Well, Jesus' point is that you never know when it's going to happen, so you have to be ready all the time. But we don't like that. So what we do is we try to find the answer in the Bible. There has to be a code. There has to be a cipher or some sort of biblical clue. We can't figure this out, so that we buy more books and we buy other things that tell us about predictions or end times. We tell our pastor, oh, you've got to preach on prophecy. You've got to preach on Revelation. And we got to do another Bible study so that we know when Jesus will return. Why do we want to know? Because then we don't have to be ready. We don't have to be ready 24/7. If Jesus is going to return in 2020, then I'll just be ready then. You sit down and read all of Matthew chapter 24 and tell me the feeling that you get from listening to Jesus' words. Because the disciples, they ask him that same question. They say, tell us, when will all these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus replies back in verse 36. He says, concerning that day and hour, no one knows. Not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. So nobody knows when. Yeah, well, see, I was listening to Dr. So-and-so, and he says the time will come, blah, blah, blah. If you're talking to me, and I have already tuned you out. Because if I am going to believe Dr. So-and-so, then that means I don't believe Jesus. Jesus says nobody knows. So either he's right or he's a liar. Jesus says, no, you need to be ready right now. You need to always be ready. When any big historical event takes place, we say, I remember where I was when I heard. I remember where I was when I saw, right? We always take a very special note of where we were. The last greatest historical event the world will ever see will be Christ's return. Did you ever think of where you would be when that happens? Because you won't ever get to tell anyone, except for maybe in heaven. Oh, where were you when Jesus returned? I was skydiving. Where do you want to be? Think about it. Where do you want to be when Jesus returns? I'd want to be in an orphanage, working with a nonprofit, while I was ladling soup kitchen food to the homeless, and I'm singing Bringing in the Sheaves all at the same time. That would be the perfect thing, right? Not at home watching The Bachelor. Probably not. That probably wouldn't be my best moment. But it's going to happen. Jesus is going to be a surprise, and people won't be ready. They won't be expecting it. There'll be people who will be at the movies. There will be people who are just out grocery shopping. Others will be asleep on an airplane. Others will be out at a bar with friends. Others will be out walking their dog. Some of you will be at line at Whataburger. It just seems difficult, doesn't it, to just say that I'm going to be ready 24/7, that I'm going to be ready, this heightened state of alertness. But Jesus says, be ready for action, knowing that any moment it could happen. So what attitude would I have to take on to make that come true? To say that my friends would call me to some place or some activity, and you would say, man, I don't want to do that today. I don't want to go there because, that's just not where I want to be when Jesus returns. I don't want to do that. I mean, what if Jesus comes back during that? I don't know. I believe Jesus could return at any moment, and when he does, that's not where I want to be. That's not what I want to be doing when I see my Savior for the very first time. So Jesus has this little teachable moment, and then Peter listens and he responds back in verse 41. He says, Lord, are you telling this parable for us all? And the Lord said, who then is the faithful and wise manager whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time. Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, my master is delayed in coming, and begins to beat the male and female servants and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he doesn't know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much is given, of him much more is required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. You know, it's kind of funny when you hear people talk about Jesus, what kind of man he was, or you see actors portray him in a movie, or you see pictures of him in paintings. We're talking about Jesus, talking about him in 3D, meaning, okay, for 6 weeks we were looking at how he was from all the different angles, how he looked in real life, not just the beautiful pictures of Jesus in a 2D painting. How do you think of Jesus when you think about him? You think about him as a gentle person, a kind of person who didn't say harsh words. He was a nice guy. And what does Jesus say in verse 46? The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the unfaithful. Does that sound gentle? That sounds graphic. Jesus just said that an unprepared person will be cut to pieces. And the next passage says, and that servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. Does that sound nice? Why does Jesus use harsh language like this? Because he doesn't talk like this all the time. So he's trying to make a point. Because this is serious. If your kid takes a knife out of the knife block and chases his sister around the house with it, your appropriate response isn't to go, Billy, shh, stop. Come over here. That's just not how we act. Right? If you saw that taking place, your first response wouldn't be to stand up slowly and straighten out your coat. You would probably use your voice loudly, and you would move quickly. Because that's not a joke. You'd scream, you would get mad, you would take action, you would punish your child so that they realize there's seriousness in this. Are you crazy? You could hurt yourself. You could hurt your sister. Playing with knives is not right. We don't do that in this family. Right? Some actions are very careless, some actions are stupid, and the end results are devastating. Something happens in your life or the life of your family, and now everything's different. Your older sister, who you looked up to, she got a divorce. And you think, wow, I never saw that coming. I would never have thought that would happen to her. Your younger brother, he's in jail. Your mom passes away. She was the rock of that family, and she held everything together. And now all the other kids are looking to you. When something happens in your life like that, those major moments, those game changers, those moments clearly define for you the things that are important and the things that aren't. You immediately have clarity and you say, this is important and this isn't important. And when Jesus returns, what are those things going to be? What are those things that won't matter anymore? And what are the things that are going to matter more than anything? I mean, if you see Jesus descend, you instantly will have this instant of clarity, and you'll think, all of this doesn't matter anymore, and all of this is more important than anything. So what should you be doing until Jesus returns? Where should you be when Jesus returns? Did you notice at the beginning of verse 41? Peter starts this all off with a question. He says, Lord, are you telling this parable for us all? Are you telling this parable for everybody? In other words, this message is for them, right? Those people? I mean, not the smart Bible people, not church people, not church staff, not church leadership. I mean, I'm a Sunday school teacher. I'm on the board. You're not telling this parable for everybody. You just mean them, right? Not not disciples. What do you think? Do you think Jesus was intending the parable for us all? You know, sometimes the people who have the most knowledge, they tend to be the most arrogant. The people who've been someplace, in one place the longest, they tend to be the most relaxed and the most dormant. Jesus uses very serious, very harsh language. He says, listen, if you know the Father's will, you better do it. Won't it be worse for those who know better? James says something very similar. He says, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. Hey, I know more Bible verses than you, and I've been a Christian all my life, and I know the life I'm supposed to live. I know that, he paid the penalty, and he gave his life for me, and I know that I should give my life for him, but just not yet. I mean, I don't want him to return yet because I'm just not ready yet. In other words, I know I'm supposed to live for Jesus, but I still have a couple more years, so for right now, I just would rather live for myself. Jesus says, it doesn't work that way. It should be, I hear, I get convicted, I act. Not, I hear, I feel guilty, I go home, and then life goes back to normal. Listen, God entrusts you with a lot. You have so much wisdom, you have so much ability. Don't just do nothing with it. What does the master say to the servant who does nothing with their gift? What does the master say to the one who buries their gift? The servant says, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you can have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scatter no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with bankers, and at my coming I could have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. For to everyone who has will be given more, but from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast that worthless servant into the outer darkness, in that place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Nice words or harsh words? This is serious or this is playtime? I look at my life right now and I think, man, God has given me so much. And even looking at you and being a shepherd, it's a huge burden to me to be entrusted with even teaching you. This series, Jesus in 3D, it had some pretty powerful swings in it, didn't it? And it almost kind of felt tossed around like I went a couple rounds. And as a teacher, you can't do that every week. You can't always hit them hard because people get tired of that. But when push comes to shove, those doors back there, when you come through that, we talk about eternal stuff. Every single week, it's going to be reward versus punishment, or heaven or hell, or love your neighbor, or service, or evangelism, or discipleship, or giving. This is all serious stuff. And yes, we can have fun here, but the Bible, each week, it's serious. There are things that really matter in your life, and you already have that knowledge. You do. You really do. I know you feel inadequate. I know you want to learn more, and you want more information, but right now, you have everything you need to know. You really do. You have all the knowledge you need to go out there and change your world. Mark Twain once said that if he had had more time, he would have said less. I hope Jesus returns right now. I hope Jesus returns before I finish speaking. But since he didn't, if you have unfinished business, make a plan. Just start crossing stuff off your list. It's time to start inviting that friend to church. It's time to start talking to that neighbor. It's time to pick up the phone and call your brother. It's time to start taking eternal things with friends and neighbors seriously. If it's time to invest in the future, it's time to invest in the next generation, it's time to invest in your heavenly reward. Don't wait till the end of your life to get things done or to make a difference. So we're going to close out this time with an opportunity for you to pray. Maybe you don't want Jesus to return right now. So tell him why. Tell Jesus your bucket list. Ask him for help. Ask him for encouragement. Ask him for strength. How often do you get to sit in silence with no phone and no distractions? So we're going to give that time to you.